If you think experimenting on live humans is disturbing, then you haven't seen some of these 5 banned horror games. A quick trigger warning, this video will discuss excessively dark topics such as child abuse, SA, drug abuse, and more. So if any of that is triggering, I completely understand, click out, and hopefully I can see you again soon. But with that, like and subscribe, and let's get into these banned horror games. Our first game is Demonophobia. In this game, you play as a 14-year-old girl called Sakuri Kunikai, who has to traverse her life with demons and literal body horror everywhere she turns. Now, compared this to something like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, it doesn't sound like that big a deal. The big deal comes in when there are questionable scenes involving minors and demons, if you catch what I'm laying down. The general consensus is that this is torture porn involving children, and some people defend it by saying that the more adult aspects, and I'm not talking about gore, are just implied and never confirmed, whereas many others state that it is quite on the nose and obvious what they were trying to do. Immediately, New Zealand said nope and banned the game, and the game is heavily restricted in over 13 countries. Our second game is Postal II. Aside from having a character that looks just like Albert Wesker, Postal II, or the entire Postal series in fact, is known to be just like a fever dream. You can already guess what countries banned this. New Zealand and Australia immediately ran in and said nope, we will not be participating in this cat-shooting fever dream insult delinquent behavior, and claimed that this is proof that video games are corrupting the minds of youth. Even in the US, which is known to be relatively lax when it comes to games and media, it found itself in hot water. The court system pointed out that this is proof that video games are steering youth down a dark path, and even the developers agreed, playfully so. They claimed that this is the game that will lead your teens down a dark, imaginative, holy shit path. Unlike the previous game, Postal 2 was not banned for being disturbing, but more so for being confusing, a fever dream, honestly like you're on LSD, and being very, very offensive. If only they knew what kind of video games would come out in a few years' time. Our third game is one that's relatively popular now, and it's called Hatred. Hatred completely stirred the masses, and not for the right reasons. The plot? Well, edgy guy goes complete edge mode and decides to butcher an entire city in the most gruesome ways possible. At the time, this was extremely dark content. Fast forward 10 years and you can find worse on YouTube. This very platform. But at the time, it was heavy and the backlash was immediate. It was temporarily pulled from Steam and banned in 2 countries, and you already predicted it, New Zealand was one of them. The other country was my home country, Germany, because both countries labeled it unnecessarily violent. Now, it was allowed back in stores later on after a lot of the gore was removed, and after the developers claimed it was to eliminate all the, quote, fake philosophical stuff to justify their violence. The antagonist, whose name is literally just the antagonist, is now widely popular and has, for some reason, garnered some fangirls. You can look on Character AI and you can find some bots there. Don't ask why I'm on that website, okay? I will not answer any questions. Our fourth game is Manhunt, and you probably heard of Manhunt. Yeah, it's that game where you go around and kill people and get a score for it. Yeah, that's Manhunt. You play as, quote-unquote, the protagonist, I use that term loosely, James Earl Cash, a death row inmate given a second chance. His second chance is literally butchering people in creative and efficient ways, given a ranking for that. Of course, you can already predict, New Zealand said nope, and immediately took it off the shelves, labeling it grossly offensive. It was also taken off the shelves in the UK briefly, but then allowed back on shelves after heavy censorship. Now, why the censorship? We see killing in video games all the time. Well, for the time, it was very gory and it added some pizzazz to the killings. Here are some examples. Nail guns, plastic bags, fingers, eyeballs, wood chippings. Anything you can really think of has been used as a weapon, and you can probably find a scene revolving around that in Manhunt. Thus, why it was labelled as even too much for adults. And our fifth game is called Euphoria. You might not have heard of this one, and you know what? You should probably leave because you can live a perfect life without knowing about this game. But for those who are curious, stick around. Euphoria is an extremely dark game, and also where the trigger warning came in earlier. You play as a quote-unquote protagonist called Kazuki Takatu, and you wake up with 6 women. You are instructed by an anonymous speaker to commit various acts to these other women, and yes, some of them are not 18 years of age. I'm not going to go into detail what you're instructed to do, but it includes psychological, physical, and sexual torture. That's just a few examples. But you can already imagine that it being banned in 9 countries permanently and temporarily banned in 3, including Japan where it was created, that it was pretty dark. Some people defend this game that it falls under creative expression, and others argue that raping someone is not considered creative expression, which, you know what, I agree with that statement. Now, some others also mention that there are theoretically quote-unquote good endings, which is true, but the vast majority of the endings are just pure torture porn that involve people who are already vulnerable and not even of age. The internet and people as a whole have agreed that this crosses a line that should never be crossed, not even in the darkest of video games. And there we have it. 5 banned video games that are just too damn dark to play. If you want me to make a part 2 featuring even darker video games, put it down below in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and have a good evening. Stay a diva.